Fender could lose every single one of these cease and desist fights, in every court, and still come out ahead. That is the part almost nobody has noticed. While everyone argues about whether Fender can win in a courtroom, the move that actually matters already happened somewhere else entirely. In June of last year, the company that owns Fender quietly bought Reverb. Not a guitar, not a factory. The marketplace itself, the single largest place on earth where used guitars are bought and sold, including nearly every Stratocaster copy Fender is now sending letters about. Sit with that for a moment. The same corporate parent now sits on both sides of the table. It owns the brand making the claim, and it owns the store where the accused guitars change hands. This channel asks one question before any other. Who really owns it? Not only who owns the name on the headstock, but who owns the room where the whole industry does business? Because once you line up who bought what and when, this campaign stops looking like a legal fight and starts looking like something far more deliberate. Let me walk you through it. Start with what most people think is happening, because the headline version is wrong in a way that matters. Over the past year, Fender has been sending cease and desist letters to guitar builders who make instruments based on the Stratocaster body shape. Small boutique shops first, then larger companies, and eventually PRS and the John Mayer Silver Sky. Now here's the precision this audience always gets right and the headlines always get wrong. A cease and desist letter is not a lawsuit. Nobody has been sued. A cease and desist is a demand, a warning, a threat to go to court if the other side refuses to back down. And that detail is not a technicality here. It is the whole point. Because if you assume the goal is to win a lawsuit, none of this adds up. Fender has tried to claim ownership of this shape before, and it lost. Most lawyers watching expect it would lose again. So why send the letters at all? The answer may be that winning a lawsuit was never the goal in the first place. To see why, go back to the spring of 2025. Reverb, the online marketplace, had been owned since 2019 by Etsy, the craft goods giant, which paid $275 million for it. Then Etsy decided to sell. The buyer was an investment group built around two names: Creator Partners, run by a former streaming executive, and Servco Pacific, a privately held company out of Hawaii. And Servco Pacific is not a stranger to this story. Servco is the majority owner of Fender. The deal was announced in April of 2025 and closed that June. So by the middle of last year, the parent company of Fender held a controlling interest in the largest secondhand guitar marketplace in the world. And then, months later, the letters began going out. The order of those two events is the entire story. First the marketplace, then the campaign. And it helps to understand just how dominant that marketplace is. Reverb is not one option among many for a used guitar. For most players, it is the option, the default, the place you list an instrument precisely because that is where every serious buyer is already looking. A marketplace like that does not merely process sales. It sets the terms of the entire secondhand economy. It decides what is easy to sell and what is not, what is visible and what is buried, which listings a buyer sees first, and which ones never surface at all. Owning the brand is power over what gets built. Owning the marketplace is authority over what gets sold, to whom, and at what price. They are different kinds of control, and until last year, they sat in different hands. Sit with the shape of that, because this is where it stops being an abstraction and starts touching real people. Picture the ordinary seller. You own a Stratocaster-style guitar built by one of these boutique shops, or a Silver Sky you no longer play, and you decide to sell it. Where do you go? Almost certainly Reverb. It is simply where the buyers are. And the company that now takes a cut of that sale is the same company whose brand is sending letters arguing that the guitar in your hands should not exist. The maker of the original, the marketplace where the rivals are resold, and the party making the legal claim are no longer three separate interests sitting across from each other. They sit under one roof, and there is a bitter little detail folded inside this. The silver sky, the very guitar drawing the loudest letters, has in recent years outsold the Fender Stratocaster on Reverb. So the competitor that beat Fender on its own platform is now being challenged by the company that owns that platform. And it is not only individual sellers who sit inside this loop. The cease and desist letters reportedly reached retailers too, the very shops that stock and resell guitars, not just the builders who make them. Meanwhile, Fender already runs a formal presence on Reverb of its own, a certified pre-owned program that places factory-blessed used Fenders directly onto the platform. So the brand was already doing business on Reverb as a seller. Before its parent company ever owned the marketplace, those sales run through. Stack those pieces together, and the picture sharpens. The same corporate family now touches the maker, the official resale channel, the marketplace itself, and the legal claim against the competition. Four corners of the same room. One caveat matters here, and it matters a great deal. Reverb has stated plainly that Fender will not receive preferential treatment on the site, and that its existing arrangements, including the Fender certified pre-owned program, are simply one of around 20 similar programs the marketplace runs. Take that seriously, because we are going to hold it up to the light in a minute. I am not going to pretend a public statement settles the question, but I am also not going to pretend it was never made. It was, and it counts. But I would add one thing, carefully. Preferential treatment is the obvious risk, the kind you can write a policy against. The quieter risk is structural, and no policy statement quite reaches it, because even a marketplace run with perfect fairness still hands its owner the data, the reach, and the long game. You can promise not to tip the scale, and still own the scale. Now here's the part that is interpretation, not proven fact, and I am going to label it as exactly that. You do not need to win a single lawsuit to benefit from a position like this one. Think about what a cease and desist campaign does, even when it never reaches a courtroom. A small builder who receives a letter from a company the size of Fender often cannot afford to test it. The legal bills alone would bury a shop that runs on a handful of people. So many simply stop, or quietly change the shape, or go silent, regardless of whether the underlying claim would ever hold up in front of a judge. That is a chilling effect, and it works with no verdict at all. Now, lay the marketplace on top of it. The owner of Reverb can see what sells, at what price, how often, and from which sellers. That is the most detailed map of the secondhand guitar world that exists anywhere. It shows which copies are gaining on the originals, which builders are quietly eating market share, and which models a buyer reaches for when the price is finally right. Information like that outlasts any single court ruling because it does not expire the day a case is dismissed. And the company holding that map is tied to the brand that benefits whenever a buyer chooses an original over a copy. None of that requires a judge to rule for anyone. This is interpretation on my part, but it is a fair reading of the board. The courtroom may never have been the prize. The leverage was. This is exactly the kind of thing this channel exists to trace. We do not chase the press release or the outrage of the week. We follow the money, we read who bought what, and we lay the ownership records side by side until the real shape of the thing finally shows itself. No sponsorships, no protected reputations. If you want the version of these stories that follows the paper trail instead of the headline, subscribe and stay with me, because the strongest argument against everything I just said is coming up next, and it deserves a real hearing. So let me give the other side its due, honestly, because the fair version is stronger than the angry version admits. There is nothing illegal about one company owning two businesses in the same industry. Holding companies do it constantly, across every market you can name. Servco taking a stake in Reverb is, on its face, an ordinary investment in a profitable marketplace. And it was creator partners, not Servco alone, that led the deal. Reverb has operated as an independent business for years and has publicly committed to staying that way. The cease and desist campaign, by Fender's own account, is aimed narrowly at near-exact replicas of the Stratocaster, not at every guitar that shares a vaguely similar outline. And a company does have a genuine right to defend a design it actually created. Maybe the timing really is a coincidence. Maybe an investment arm and a guitar brand under the same corporate umbrella simply made two unrelated decisions that happened to line up on a calendar. That is genuinely possible, and an honest look at this has to leave the door open for it. I cannot read the boardroom's mind, and I am not going to insult you by pretending that I can. But here is what does not depend on anyone's intentions at all. The structure is real, whether the motive is innocent or not. When the maker of a product, the marketplace where that product and its rivals are resold, and the legal claim against those rivals all trace back to the same owner. That is a concentration of control the guitar world has simply never seen before. You do not have to believe in a cartoon villain to feel uneasy about one company holding all three of those positions at the same time. The conflict is built into the ownership chart itself, no matter what anyone ever decides to do with it. And that is the difference between a rumor and a fact. The intentions are a rumor. The chart is a fact. So the bottom line comes back to the question this channel always begins with. Who really owns it? For years, that meant who owns the name on the headstock, or who really builds the guitar inside the factory. This story quietly adds a third floor to that question, and it is the floor almost nobody was watching. Who owns the room where the whole industry buys and sells? Because Fender, run as an asset and not as a workshop, may have just answered that with a checkbook, while everyone else was still arguing about a courtroom that may never even convene. The auditors of this industry learned a long time ago to watch the ownership filings instead of the press releases. A campaign like this is exactly why. So I will hand it to you, and I genuinely want to know where you land on it. Is this a closed loop, deliberately built, where Fender comes out ahead no matter what any court ever says? Or is it just a large company that happens to own two businesses, and we are connecting dots that were never meant to be connected? Drop a comment and pick a side. Tell me which one you actually see. I read every single one.